This year, Center for Civil Society decided to collaborate with Atlantic Council, given our shared vision of a free and prosperous society. And our hope was to actually learn from these indices to identify areas of reform in the work that we do on governance and ease of doing business. Today, we are fortunate to have with us Dan Negrea. He's joined with us over Zoom. But before we give him the space, and we wanted to play a video where he takes us through the findings of this year's Freedom and Prosperity Index, which is the 2023 index. What you see on your screen right now is a Slido QR code. I'd request you all to please use this QR code to put in any questions that you may have during this session. Shorjo will keep it on for a few minutes till I give you some more background on Dan Negrea. So he's the Senior Director of the Freedom and Prosperity Center at Atlantic Council. Before this, he was the State Department Special Representative for Commercial and Business Affairs between 2019 and 2021. Between 2018 and 19, he was a member of the Secretary of State's Policy Planning Office, where he was responsible for the economic portfolio. For 3 decades before that, he held leadership positions in Wall Street firms where he raised over $15 billion in financings in the United States and abroad, mostly for middle market companies. He holds an MBA from Cornell University and an MA from the School of International Economic Relations in Romania. He's published extensively on foreign affairs. I'd now like to request Shorjo to play the video where Dan Negrea takes us through the findings of this year's Freedom and Prosperity Index. Another reminder, you have the Slido link. Please do add questions as you get them while watching these video. Thank you.
Deputy Director of the Center and my colleague. So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dan Negrea. I'm the Senior Director of the Atlantic Council's Freedom and Prosperity Center. And with me is Joseph Lemoine, Deputy Director of the Center, and my colleague and partner in this endeavor. We are absolutely delighted to participate in your event. The Center for Civil Society is one of the 5 strategic partners of the center that we are leading, and we have many friends there. Prashant is a friend of some time now, and we also worked with Parth Shah, who contributed to a collection of essays that we put together. And we got to know more recently Amit, and congratulations for the position that you just acquired. So what we want to do today in this discussion is to familiarize you with the tool that we've created, the Freedom and Prosperity Indexes that our center publishes. You can access them on the website of the center and download the data if you want to do in-depth research. And we will also show you how we used these tools that we created to look specifically at India and the region in which India is, the South and Central Asia region. Neither Joseph nor I are experts on either India or Asia. So we will just show you how we looked at the data, and we will invite you to go to our website and do your own analysis and dig deeper in the data or look at them from a different perspective. So with that, I will invite Joseph to start our presentation.
Thank you, Dan. So we always like to start any presentation by reminding ourselves of who we are. So Dan and I work for the Freedom and Prosperity Center. The objective of the center is to increase the well-being of people everywhere, and especially the poor and marginalized in developing countries. How we do this is through unbiased database research on the relationship between freedom and prosperity, the relationship between prosperity and economic freedom, political freedom, and legal freedom in support of sound policy choices. So essential to this work is this product that we created that is the Freedom and Prosperity Indexes. There are two separate indexes that are unique because they allow to analyze the interaction between freedom and prosperity. Each of the two indexes are comprehensive. So we define freedom holistically. We measure three sub-indexes: economic freedom, political freedom, and legal freedom, which is the rule of law. Each of them have equal weight to create the overall freedom index, of which we give a score and a rank for each country. The companion index is the prosperity index, which has 6 indicators. Here again we have a comprehensive view of the term. So it's not only GDP per capita, which is the income indicator. We also measure health, education, inequality, minority rights, and the environment. We cover 164 countries from 1995 to 2022 in our latest report. That is 100,000 data points, over 19 indicators from 10 different sources. So we don't produce the data, we collect data from other sources and we organize it around this framework. Like I said, the Freedom Index has 3 sub-indexes: economic freedom, political freedom, and legal freedom. Each of them have equal weight. Under them, there are different indicators. Each of them have equal weight as well. All of this is available on our website, fully transparent, easy to understand, and unbiased. So in the report that we published last June, there are 3 main takeaways. The first one, and probably the most important, is prosperity is highly correlated with freedom, meaning that free countries tend to be much more prosperous. But also, and that's something that is very exciting, we were able, because we have all this data from 1995 to 2022 and 464 countries, we were able to look with how changes in freedom lead to improvement in prosperity. Because if you want to make the argument that you need to increase your freedom, you want to know what am I going to get from that? And so here we looked at changes on freedom and how that correlates with changes on prosperity. And you see that the line has a positive slope, meaning that countries that increase their freedom also increase their prosperity over time. So it's a very exciting finding that gets us closer to a causal relationship between freedom and prosperity. The third takeaway is that autocracies tend not to be prosperous. So in this table, we show on the left the top 30 countries, and on the right the bottom 30 countries ranked based on their level of freedom. We have 4 categories: free, mostly unfree, and unfree, and we do the same for prosperity. If you look on the left, you see that the top 30 countries are all free, and all of them are prosperous except free. On the right, you see a lot of red and whatever that color is, orange or orange-red. When a country that is unfree is not going to be prosperous. Here we show the level of prosperity based on which group countries end up being. So that's the average score on prosperity for each of the 4 groups. And you see that unfree countries are less prosperous than mostly unfree countries and mostly free, and then free countries. So that's the same thing as showing a correlation, but this graph is very interesting because you see how much the gap between mostly free and free was shocking to us, meaning that you're going to get benefit as you get freer, but if you go fully free, benefits are exponential. That's what this chart shows. all this data is available on our website. We encourage you to go look at it, and all the charts that Dana is going to comment are taken from this website. The data is available for download for free. Everything is there. And on this website, you can also find our report, which is on the right here. And we encourage you to go look at it. And now,
before you change the picture, please note that on the cover of our report, we have a picture from the Festival of Color in India. And we are very happy to have found that picture. I think it is just a gloriously beautiful photograph, and we were happy to put it on the cover.
A beautiful illustration of freedom, indeed.
Exactly, freedom of women to dance.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Joseph.
Back to you then, yeah.
So let's go to the next slide. So what we wanted to do here is to show how India ranks, in this case, in prosperity. Over the period 1995 to 2022. So what you have on the horizontal axis are years, and on the vertical axis is the score. You have one line for the global score. You have another line for the region, South and Central Asia. And then another line for 3 countries that we picked, and it's of course a choice. We could have picked other countries to compare with India, but we picked larger countries, Pakistan and Bangladesh. So this shows where India is in relation to the score for all the 164 countries, and in relation to the score for all the countries in the South and Central Asia region. And again, please remember, this is not just GDP per capita, it is six indicators that we average. Next slide, please. So the score, the line that we showed for India, for prosperity, measure 6 things. So the 6 indicators, 3 of them are above the average and 3 of them are below. So the ones that are above the average are health, environment, and minority rights. Next slide, please. And the 3 that are below average are income, inequality, and education. And what is striking here is a nice increase in income and a decrease in the score in inequality and an increase in education. Next slide, please. And then we look at freedom. India clearly outperforms the regional average, albeit in a downward trend. And then we also show Pakistan increasing and Bangladesh on the downward trend. Next slide, please. And as we discussed, the freedom score reflects the scores for 3. So the freedom indicator index has 3 sub-indexes: economic, political, and legal sub-indexes, which each has a score. So here what we wanted to show when we talk about the freedom score, which is the line in the middle, what are the components that are making it up, and how are these components evolving? And you will see at the bottom the economic freedom score improving, the political freedom score going down, and the legal freedom sort of flat but slightly down. Next slide, please. So to put India's freedom score in context, you can see over this period of time, in addition to, so we dropped here the regional trend line, and the global line, but we replaced it with Bhutan and Nepal. Bhutan is one of the best performers in our freedom score, and we discuss it in our report. Next slide, please. And this is the prosperity score. And again, Bhutan, rapid improvement in freedom and also rapid improvement. I don't know about rapid, but consistent upward trend in both freedom and prosperity, and also for Bangladesh, we see an improvement in prosperity, and then of course India with a steady performance. Next slide, please. So again, here is the two, sort of a summary, the prosperity score and the freedom score, and the trends, showing India, the global score, and the regional score. So that's what we wanted to, next slide, please. So that's what we wanted to accomplish today, to make you aware that this tool of we've created gives us data. There are also for some, for all the indicators, there are also sub-indicators that you can look at if you want to dig deeper to see what leads to the trend lines that you have seen. So I hope that this presentation will make you curious to go to our website and do your own analysis and reach your own conclusions on this very interesting topic. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for being a patient and keen audience and for sending in your questions on Slido. We received quite a few, so we've shortlisted the top 5. As I mentioned earlier, Dan Negrea has joined us on Zoom and he'll be answering those questions. To run this Q&A session, I would like to invite Prashant Narang, who heads the research team at Center for Civil Society.
Thank you, Jaina. So a lot of questions, in fact, from the audience. Dan, are you there? Dan, are you ready for questions?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can. Thank you. Okay, the first question is, you shared a chart that shows outliers like Russia with limited freedom but high prosperity. What do you think is the reason for that? Are there other equally strong determinants of prosperity?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Let me first say that I'm absolutely thrilled to participate at this event with CCS. CCS is one of our strategic partners. We have great admiration for the work that you are doing. I was fascinated to hear Dr. Parth Shah and his presentation. And Parth, you should check out the Wall Street Journal of this weekend. There is an article on the topic of education, which is a very, very hot topic in the United States. And there's this great organization called Moms for Freedom. And they interviewed the 2 women who founded it. And the title is, "We Are Not Co-Parenting with the Government." It's a terrific title, basically saying we, the parents, and especially these 2 mothers, have something to say about that. Great to see Amit and Prashant. We've talked a long time. So the question about Russia and other determinants. A few things to clarify here. The relationship between freedom and prosperity, the correlation is high, but it is not one-to-one. So we can show 0.84 correlation between the score of a country in freedom and the score of a country in prosperity. But there are also exceptions, and I'll come back to the exceptions in a second. The other thing, as we all know, correlation doesn't mean causality. And a country increasing its freedom, we believe, over time, or decreasing its freedom, will affect the prosperity score. But there is a lag. So now, in the case of Russia specifically, Russia and a number of other countries rich in natural resources, for example, the Gulf monarchies, have a higher score in prosperity than their score in freedom. And we believe that a great contributor to this is the fact that they're rich in natural resources. Something like 55% of the budget of Russia comes from the export of hydrocarbons, of energy of one sort or another. So we think that's what it is. But we have done some very interesting work on Russia, comparing Russia, which obviously was part of the Soviet Union, with all the other countries that are now independent that used to be republics in the Soviet Union, especially the Baltics. And what we are showing is that the Baltics that chose freedom, that joined the European Union and NATO, increased their prosperity dramatically, and they escaped the middle income trap, which is a World Bank concept. They put the GNI at 12,500 or something like that. While Russia is still below the middle income trap. The middle income trap measures, it's a threshold between countries that are that manage to make the move up from low-income countries to middle-income countries, but did make the next step up from middle-income countries to high-income countries. And the Baltics did, and Russia did not. So that's a long-winded answer to this excellent question.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, I'm glad that you also touched on Gulf monarchies, because there was another question, similar one on Saudi Arabia. Okay, so let me now also ask this very interesting question, which is freedom helps create prosperity, but is the reverse also true, where prosperity can help create freedom?
Yeah, it is a very, very good question. It's a perfectly reasonable question to ask, and there is also a solid body of literature that says that countries first become rich and then, or prosperous, I don't know about rich, but prosperous, and then the people who now have more economic means ask for political freedoms. And one way that we tested that was to see the relationship between prosperity and the components of freedom. So again, the way we look at the freedom index is we have three sub-indexes: economic freedom, political freedom, and legal freedom. And what we saw was that the correlation between economic freedom, the sub-index for economic freedom, the sub-index for political freedom, and sub-index for legal freedom, the correlation coefficients are different with prosperity. So the correlation is strongest with legal freedom. The next strongest is with economic freedom. And the least strong, still positive, but least strong is with political freedom. Now, we are early in our work. Our center didn't exist until 2 years ago. So this is ongoing work, but the explanation that we have at the moment is that there may be a sequencing of the freedoms. And first thing that must exist is legal freedom, and we have also a component there for security. So if you have a country in which there is civil war or the institutions are corrupt and so on, you can't have anything else. So first you need that, and then you need to have economic freedom, and political freedom comes next. And then look at a country, for example, like Singapore, and they have little political freedom. They have very, very high legal freedom and economic freedom. The total score in freedom is high, and their prosperity is very high. Thank you.
Yeah. So there was another question on Singapore, and you discussed that. Okay, so there's a question on primary education's role. How does primary education's role, how does it contribute to nation's prosperity index? Is there a relationship between education and prosperity?
Yeah, so we showed a pie chart early on in our recorded presentation on the 6 components that we measure in prosperity. So what we show there is that we give equal weighting to income, health, inequality, environment, minority rights, which we measure with religious freedom, and education. So in our work, the way we reflect education is as a characteristic of a prosperous country, and we give it an equal weighting to the others. And by the way, coming back to the question about Russia, again, all countries are different, but talking about Russia specifically, their education level is very high. After all, in the early years of after the Second World War, they were the first ones to put the first satellite in space, the first man in space, the first woman in space, the first dog in space, and so on and so forth. They had developed a nuclear program. Now, it's declined since then, we believe, because of lack of freedom. But their education system remains very strong. Thank you.
Great. Okay. The next question is it fair to judge all countries on the same criteria? We have the same index. So is it fair to judge all countries on the same criteria?
Yeah, we think it's extremely fair. Precisely because they have the same criteria. We believe that the aspiration for prosperity is a universal aspiration, and the aspiration for freedom, which is a good in itself, is also universal. There is a lot of talk these days, especially after the Ukraine war, where what seems to be very clear is that there is now a grouping of countries that you can call sort of, using again the terminology of the previous Cold War, the free world. And I really don't like the terminology Western countries and Western values, because they are not Western values, they are universal values. And freedom, the aspiration for freedom is universal. That's why India is the greatest, the most populous democracy, as we always love to say in the United States, and Japan and Australia and other countries that are not Western geographically have great accomplishments in democracy, and the people have a yearning for freedom. So I think there are universal values, and measuring all countries against the same standards reflecting those universal values is fine.
Great. Thank you so much, Dan. I think we have covered all the questions. Most questions were some variants of the questions that I asked you. And thank you so much for being with us. I know it's horribly early morning there in that part of the world. And you got up early for us and joined us that early in the morning. Thank you so much. And we also would like to thank Atlantic Council for their support and for the wonderful indices, both Prosperity Index as well as the Freedom Index. I think there's some nice key takeaways for all the countries, especially India, for charting out our reform path. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Best of luck with your conference. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Prashant, for coordinating that. As I mentioned earlier, one of the areas that Center for Civil Society works on is governance. And as part of that, our latest initiative has been to work on a model act which provides a framework that can ensure that businesses and citizens are able to access government services in a speedy, timely, and efficient manner. I would actually like to invite Anirudh Datta, Prashant, Amit, and Parth to join us on stage to launch the act. Could you please join us here? Great. Can we have a huge round of applause, please? Thank you. Prashant, it would be great if you could briefly share about the Model Act and the process. Yeah.
Okay. Actually, I know you all are waiting to hear Gurcharan sir. And with that kind of pressure, it's difficult to say anything valuable. But I'll still talk about the act very quickly and try to limit it to only a few words. So if you ever tried getting a permit in India, you would know it's almost like trying to make jalebis, twisty, complex, and it leaves you going in circles. So why is that? Imagine our policy is an amateur's knitting project. Instead of a cozy sweater, we end up with a tangled mess. Surely we'd all prefer policies that feel like our favorite songs, rhythmic and in sync with our day-to-day lives. But let's time travel back to 2005. While we were waiting for Right to Education, Right to Information Act, Center for Civil Society sprinkles its own magic. We talked about proactive disclosures. Basically, officials should spill bins without anyone demanding for it. But oh wait, there was no penalty for not spilling, but like a watchdog that forgot its teeth. If only they had lent CCS an ear. Who play the waiting game? Why play the waiting game with redressals that move at the pace of a retired snail? Then jumping to 2014, ease of doing business wasn't just coffee table chatter. While many geeked out over fancy tech fixes, CCS, in classic grandma style, questioned the basics. Why force entrepreneurs to show 1 lakh rupees in their account before saying go? Zero is a much cooler number, don't you think? 3 months later, someone finally saw the light. This absurd rule was scrapped. As Par said, patting on your own back, I would say pat Amit's back for turning on the switch. Quick timeout for some reflection. If you know Philips tagline, Philips company, do you know the tagline? Anybody knows Philips company's tagline? Sense and simplicity. Yes. That's what our rule book writers should scribble that on their walls, breaking it down with a dash of Richard Epstein. A rule should be clear. Think of traffic lights. Red is red and green is green. A rule should be general. Red is a halt for all. Rich, poor, young, old, no exceptions. A rule must be predictable. That countdown timer over the traffic signal, you know when to vroom. A rule must be stable. Imagine a light that won't turn green. That's pointless. A rule must be a low cost rule. Why not just have a roundabout instead of a traffic signal? So this isn't just Epstein's daydream. It's a CCS recipe also for less headaches and a smoother life. Fast forward to 2020, we CCS did Punjab a solid by auditing 25 public services during the thick of COVID. And surprise, the much talked about Punjab Accountability and Transparency Act was still in its rehearsal mode. Some call it a good law gone bad. I think if it doesn't work, it isn't just good. And now, drum roll, please. Our Model Public Service Delivery Act. It's not your typical right to service jazz. It's a nudge. It forces both the bigwigs and the everyday officers to rethink every node of approval, every paper they demand. Imagine a Delhi University student, eyes on her master's, scratching her head over why she's resubmitting documents she just gave 3 years ago for her bachelor's. Same college, same university. Sort of deja vu. To wrap up, let's create rules that feel like our favorite tunes, focused, logical, and in sync with our diverse dance of life. Because crafting laws isn't just about listing do's and don'ts. It's about crafting a masterpiece for our shared journey. With that, we have a short film on the act that we have created, not more than 5 minutes. Maybe let's switch off the lights and direct our eyes to the board. Thank you.
Public service delivery should ensure transparent, efficient, and time-bound delivery of services and benefits to citizens by government agencies and departments. This can include a wide range of services such as healthcare, education, social services, public safety, infrastructure, etc. For example, Aadhaar has streamlined service delivery by enabling easy authentication and verification. Why then do our friends still face trouble in accessing the services they deserve? There are several examples of best practices in India. Services like Passport Seva is one of the most convenient and hassle-free government services being offered.
Ministry of External Affairs, they collaborated with Tata Consultancy Services to reform how passports are issued. They re-engineered the whole process, and the result, the processing time, which used to be previously upward of 45 days, it has come down to 10 to 15 days for most applicants.
Even in mature societies, it's always a challenge to make a public servant accountable to the citizen and to make him accountable to the people and to deliver services efficiently, speedily, fairly. So the first is, wherever possible, remove the government's monopoly, create multiple players with competition. Let me give you a few illustrations. For vehicles pollution control certificate, there is now a mechanism by which certified agencies will test and certify in turn. You don't have to go to a government agency and pay a bribe. Vehicle registration, there's no good reason why a new vehicle purchase should be registered only in the Regional Transport Authority office. You can actually outsource it to various agencies with proper monitoring and control.
To ensure better delivery of public services, Centre for Civil Society has proposed the Model State Public Services Delivery Act 2023. The Act demands the formation of a nodal agency by the government, which aims at improving the applicant's experience of availing a public service, promoting use of technology for streamlining service delivery process, monitoring and evaluating the quality of public services to identify areas for improvement.
In collaboration with Atlantic Council's Freedom and Prosperity Center, Center for Civil Society is taking a transformative approach to public service delivery. We have crafted a next-generation public service delivery law setting new standards for how services touch lives. It's time to shift from a government-to-citizen relationship which is based on suspicion to one that is based on trust.
The government shall establish a central application portal to accept and process applications for services using websites and mobile applications. Concerned public authorities shall accept such application forms for processing and issuing required clearances. A public authority shall deliver all services by electronic mode within a period of 1 year from the date of commencement of this Act.
Imagine a world where accessing public services is as easy as logging into your favorite mobile application. This Act is a blueprint to a world where every citizen, be it affluent or underprivileged, is able to access services with great ease. The Act introduces the idea of institutional memory. Think of it as a one government principle. If you have submitted a document to one government department, or if a government department has issued you a document, why should you repeat the process for another government department? Forget the days of lengthy grievance redressal mechanisms. Right? The system should be about autocorrect. It should spotlight, it should highlight the bottlenecks on its own. It shouldn't wait for the complainant to go and file a complaint and then act on it. No. It should automatically create a system which is transparent, which is visible to all.
All public authorities shall provide an option for Tatkal delivery of services. Under Tatkal delivery, a public authority permits immediately upon receiving an application, while reserving the right to verify the details later. An additional fee, not exceeding 50% of the regular service delivery fee, may be charged.
This Model Act is more than just a legislation. It's a promise. It's a promise of a more accessible, equitable, and efficient public service landscape for all.
With the implementation of the Model State Public Services Delivery Act, all our work can get done jhatpat, fatafat, yani ki, ab no more hassle.